Well, thank you. It's great to be here. I hope you get used to this Australian accent. I always tell people you have to anyhow because you're going to speak it in heaven, but we'll see how we go. Well, you know, a lot of people must be really confused about the creation-evolution issue. Because you think about it, the late Dr. Carl Sagan made this statement. He said, the cosmos is all it is, or ever was, or ever will be. In other words, in the beginning, the cosmos. And then he believed that there was a Big Bang billions of years ago, and out of that Big Bang eventually came the stars, and then the sun, and then the Earth was a hot molten blob. And then the Earth cools down for millions of years, and then we find that life evolves in some primeval soup. And as you can see, then onward up progression, one kind of animal changes into another, ape-like creatures into people, till you get your average American up the top there, as you can see. But you see, if evolution's true, then supposedly as well, there's a record of the evolutionary history of life left in the fossil record, where we see these fossils all over the Earth, and supposedly that represents then millions of years of Earth's history. But if you take the Bible, if you take God's Word, it says, not in the beginning the cosmos, but in the beginning God created the heaven and the earth. And it says that God created in 6 days, not millions of years. In fact, we'll talk about that in one of the other sessions, about the literal days of creation, that the Hebrew word for day in Genesis 1 has to mean an ordinary day in the context there. And then we have this history. And I want you to follow through this history with me, that God created a perfect creation in 6 days, and then something happened, sin and death entered the world, and then we have the catastrophe of Noah's flood, a confusion at the time of the Tower of Babel. God gives different languages that would form different people groups all over the world. The flood of Noah's day would form fossils all over the world, and by the way, there was biology on board the ark, because you had land animals on the ark. The ark lands on Mount Ararat. Those animals migrate over the earth. Jesus Christ steps into that same history to become a man, dies on the cross, raised from the dead. One day there's going to be a new heavens and a new earth to come, and here we are today in Thomas Road Baptist Church. But you see, that history is very, very different, isn't it? A very, very different history to the one that Carl Sagan talked about. In the beginning the cosmos, in the beginning God. Millions of years, or just thousands of years. No global flood, there was a global flood. God created the first man from dust. No, he evolved from ape-like creatures. You think of how different those views are. Can't you see how people must be confused? Well, why is it? How can we have such different views about the origin of the universe? Well, let me ask you all a question. Yeah, pretend we're in a classroom here in school, because I was a high school teacher, so I like to, be a teacher when I'm out the front. So let me ask you a question. The creationists and evolutionists, do we have the same Earth or different Earth? You tell me. Oh, we have the same Earth, okay. Do we have the same fossils, or do we have different fossils? Same fossils. Do we have the same animals? Real animals, as you can see, not things like deer and so on, real animals like kangaroos, but do we have the same animals? Yeah, we have the same. Do we have the same world? Yeah, there's a map of the world. We have the same world, that's right. See, just a little bit of bias coming out there. Do we have the same dinosaurs? In fact, you can see dinosaurs on the stage here from our sculptor, Buddy Davis. In fact, you'll hear from him a little later on when he sings. But here's the point. Creationists and evolutionists, do we have the same facts or different facts? Same facts. So think about this for a moment. We have the same facts, we have the same evidence. Is the fight about facts? No, it's not. You know what the fight is about? How you interpret the facts, and how you interpret the facts depends upon what? The beliefs that you have to start with. It's interesting, sometimes I get on radio to debate some of these humanists or evolutionists, and they say to me, so you've got all these facts for creation. I say, actually, I've got the same facts you do. And they sort of go, huh? And then they say to me, well, wait a minute, we're on about science, you're on about religion. You know what I say to them? Actually, I have no problems with your science. No problems at all. You see, it's not your science I disagree with. Because, see, I have the same science you do. I have the same genes in the present. I believe in the science of genetics, the science of natural selection, the science of geology. Hey, we have the same rocks. We can go out and look at them and decide if they're sedimentary, igneous, metamorphic. We have the same facts. We have the same Grand Canyon. We have the same biology, the same geology, the same zoology, the same astronomy. You know what the difference is? The difference is how you interpret the facts. You see, if you look at this picture here, you'll notice if you start with the revelation that God, who has always been there, has revealed to us the truth about history, which is what the Bible claims to be, a revelation from one who knows everything, and the Bible tells us when God made animals, he tells us when death came into the world, he tells us when he made the universe and so on, then when you look at the world through that pair of glasses, see, I have on my glasses so that I can see my computer, for instance, and so I can see you. That really helps too, doesn't it? But you see, when I'm looking through my glasses, do you realize everyone has on a set of glasses? We look at the evidence in the present, because all the evidence does exist in the present. In fact, all of you exist. Well, I hope you all exist in the present. When I was a teacher, not all my students existed in the present, but hope you exist in the present. But see, what we're doing is this. We're trying to connect the past to the present. We have the present. How do we connect the past to the present? How do we do that? Well, the only way you could do that is if you knew what happened in the past to connect it to the present. What happened in the past to bring the animals here? What happened in the past to cause death to be here? What happened in the past to bring humans here? What happened in the past to cause fossils? What happened in the past to form the Grand Canyon? Well, we have a revelation from one who says, I know everything, I've always been there, here's what happened in the past. So when we take that revelation, put on our set of glasses, and we look at the evidence, we can say, now I understand. Fossils couldn't have formed before sin, there was no death before sin, there was a global flood, that connects to geology, God made distinct kinds of animals and plants, that connects to biology, and so on. But you see, if you don't believe God's revelation, then you have to have beliefs about the past based on the words of men who don't know everything, who weren't there. And you see, that's what evolution really is. It's really a belief about the past. No one was there to see chemicals form into cells or anything like that. No one was there to see ape-like creatures turn into people, or no one was there to see the Grand Canyon being formed and the layers being laid down all over the earth. And so they have certain beliefs as an evolutionist, or people who believe in millions of years. They have on a different set of glasses, but they're looking at the same evidence. You know one reason why sometimes Christians and non-Christians, creationists, evolutionists argue and don't get anywhere? Because we're arguing up here. Can't you see what I'm talking about? No, I can't see what you're talking about. It's obvious. No, it's not obvious. You know what the problem is? You're looking at the same evidence through different glasses. And what I wanted to show you is this, that when you really get down to it, the main argument is down here at this foundational level. In other words, the beliefs you have that put on the glasses that you have to start with. Look, let me sort of do a little experiment with you here to help us understand this, okay? I want to put up here my favorite fact. There it is. Isn't that nice? I think everyone should have one of those. And I'm going to ask you a question about that fact. What do you think is missing? What do you think that most likely was originally? What do you think is missing? Okay, let me give you some options. Who would say it originally was A? Anyone say A? Who would say B? Usually get one text and says it was no text. Okay. Who would say C? D? Anyone say D? How about E? Who says E? Okay. And who says F? Something else? Well, you know what? Most people, when I ask that question, what is missing? The answer they give is E. They say, well, it was a circle. Well, actually, nothing is missing because I drew it that way. Now, very, very important point for us that I want us to understand. You know what happened? I put up a fact for you, but you realize that facts by themselves are meaningless. See, all the facts are the same. Isn't that what we said? All the facts are the same, but facts by themselves are meaningless. And what happened in reality was this. Let's go back to our other diagram again. I gave you a presupposition about which to think about that fact. I said something is missing. You put on your pair of glasses. Okay, something's missing. I'm going to fill it in. You interpreted the evidence. Your interpretation was, it was a circle. By the way, your interpretation was totally consistent with your glasses, totally consistent with your presupposition. It was just totally wrong. See, when I asked you a question, you know what I did to you? I conned you all. I made you think the way I wanted you to think about the evidence. See, when I asked a question, in reality what we should have done was we should have said, wait a minute, you asked a question, what's missing? I should question this question. Most of us don't even know it's a question, let alone to question the question, let alone to know the right question to ask about the question. That's the problem that I find. See, it's like we pick up a newspaper and a scientist says, we dated this possibly so many million years old. And people say, oh, that's wonderful, isn't that great? Excuse me, what questions did they ask to get that interpretation? And if you don't know the questions, how do you know what questions to ask to question their question, to see if they're asking the right questions? And the more we research it, the more we're saying, we need to ask some questions because they're asking the wrong questions. So you see, well, I'll give you a practical example here. I mean, evolutionists talk about missing links. What do they find? Nothing. What do they label them as? Missing. Now, well, think about this. Are they missing in the evidence, or is it their theories are wrong to start with? And so what I want us to understand is this. The facts are the same, the science is the same. Do you realize what I did to you with that circle is what the newspapers do to you every day? And what the news media do on television to you every day, you know, whether it's about Israel or Afghanistan or wherever it is, when I watch the news, I'm saying to myself, am I seeing the truth about world history? No, I'm seeing someone's interpretation of the evidence based on the presuppositions they have, which is why I give up reading newspapers these days. I'm not sure what I can believe anymore. But you see, everyone interprets evidence. And what I'm going to say to you today is this. If the Bible is what it claims to be, a revelation from God who knows everything, has always been there, And if the history is true, to connect the past to the present, we should be able to put on a set of glasses that not only make sense of the evidence in the present, but we can use real science to support it and defend it. And you know, that's exactly what I can show you. Real science goes against the glasses based upon the belief in evolution, but real science confirms the glasses based upon what the Bible teaches. And I want to give you two practical examples in this session. First of all, let's go back to that statement of Carl Sagan. In the beginning, the cosmos. The cosmos is all it is, or ever was, or ever will be. The first verse of the Bible says, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. By the way, if that verse is not true, neither is the rest of the Bible. You realize that? So if somebody says to you, how do you know there's a God? Where did God come from? You know what Paul says in Romans 1:20? If you don't believe in God as creator, you're without excuse because it's so obvious that there's a God. So obvious there's a God? And that's why 1 Peter 3:15 tells us always to be ready to give reasons for what we believe. Always be ready to give reasons for what we believe. Well, let's get some reasons for what we believe. If somebody said to you, how do you know there's a God? What would your answer be? Isn't it true that in our Sunday schools and churches, one of the main ways we've taught in the past concerns the design argument? Design implies a designer. You know what I mean, don't you? You find a watch, it's obvious it didn't get there by chance. Somebody had to design a watch. Your brain's more complicated than a watch. Somebody had to design your brain. Isn't that one of the major arguments we've used? Right? For instance, when you came into this really beautiful church building, I'm sure like me, you looked at it and said, wow, I got here by an explosion in a brick factory. I mean, that's obvious, isn't it? Well, of course not. You know that somebody designed this building. Or if you take Mount Rushmore, okay, and by the way, my favourite president is there, Mount Rushmore. I don't know whether you know why he's my favourite president, but I get embarrassed when kids ask me if I'm a living fossil or something like that. I tell them, well, at least I look like an honest president, so that's that's good. Although that suited more a few years ago. But anyway, how did the president's heads get there? Well, I've got a theory. I think what happened was this. Millions of years of wind and water erosion acting on Mount Rushmore, and eventually, of course, we end up with the president's heads. Well, we do a little doctoring of that too. But isn't that the major argument we've used? Hey, I've got news for you. The church needs to catch up with the world. You know why? Because the world says, we've got an answer to that. Richard Dawkins, leading evolutionary spokesperson from Oxford University, you know what he said? We have seen that living things are too improbable and too beautifully designed to have come into existence by chance. You know, Richard Dawkins is a leading evolutionist. He wrote a book called The Blind Watchmaker to refute the design argument. And you know what they teach kids in universities and schools now? Look, as animals evolve, only those that were adapted to their environment are the ones that survive. So obviously you have a look design. So therefore apparent design is not evidence of God, it's evidence of evolution. Now what do? See, we've got to counter that argument. And by the way, there is a counter to that argument that evolutionists can't answer. In fact, it's so exciting being a Christian. It really is. Let me show you. See, life is built up on the basis of information in our genes. In fact, I like to give analogies to help people to understand this. You know, we're made of trillions of cells, and nearly all of our cells, we have all the information that builds us. It's sort of like this. If you take a rope and you put beads on the rope representing dots and dashes, if you know the Morse code, you could write the entire Bible on a piece of rope. Well, in a sense, you have these ropes of DNA and these sequences, genes, these molecules lined up in the right order that have all the information that builds you. Estimated to be for each person about 1,000 books, 500 pages, close typewritten. A lot of information, isn't it? But where did that information come from? Well, that's what we need to look at, because you see, when I went to university, my professor said, as long as those molecules lined up in the right order, as long as they lined up in the right order, millions of years ago, we could get life. And they said, look, let's have some examples here. For instance, let's take the alphabet and put the alphabet in a hat and mix them up, and then pass the hat around a class, and 3 students in a row pull out B, followed by A, followed by T. Wow, we got a word by chance random processes. Given enough time, we could get words. Given enough time, we could get the encyclopedia. As improbable as it seems, as long as you get the right order, you could get life. And so they say, see, you don't need God. As long as those molecules lined up in the right order millions of years ago, you could get life. But you know, there's something dreadfully wrong with that analogy. You know what it is? Who is that word to? That word B-A-T. Is that a word to a Dutchman or a Frenchman or an Irishman, or who is it a word to? It's only a word to somebody who already has what? The language. Without the language, the word is meaningless. See, here is a word. See that word up there? That's the word days. That's the word days in German. How do I know that? Do I know German? I haven't got a clue. But a German told me that was the word days in German. I hope it's the word days in German. I don't know whether it's the word days in German. But my point is, that is meaningless to me because I don't know the German language. But if you know the German language, presumably that order of letters there is meaningful to you. Now here's the interesting thing that we need to understand. The molecules in our ropes of DNA, the order is actually meaningless, except, you know what's exciting? In the biochemistry of our cell, there's actually a language system, a code system that reads the DNA to make it meaningful. And in doing so, it actually makes the code system that reads the DNA, that makes the code system, that reads the DNA, that makes the code system. You get the idea? You can't have one without the other. See, life is like that at a macroscopic level. Sort of like, you know, when I was flying in an aeroplane, a 747 back from Australia, my wife said, you know this plane's made of 6 million parts? I said, oh, interesting. She said, yes, but not one part flies. Do you realise an aeroplane is a collection of non-flying parts? Think about that the next time you're flying. But when it's all together, it works. You know, life is like that. For instance, in Australia, we have mosquitoes. You have mosquitoes over here, don't you? Yes. I know we live in Kentucky, we have lots of mosquitoes. But here's what I like to do to mosquitoes. We call them mozzies, by the way. But I want to ask you a question. Why did that mosquito die? So you squashed it. Yeah, but look, that's got all the RNA and DNA and everything's all there. That's the best primeval soup an evolutionist could ever ask for. You know why the mosquito died? Because I disorganized it. See, look, here's an experiment you can do at home. If you take a frog and you put it in a blender, okay? Now, you can say to someone, here I have a disorganized frog. And just leave it sit around and see if it organizes itself back again. Well, you know that's not going to happen, right? Actually, you know, there's a man called Dr. Michael Leahy. He's not a biblical creationist like myself, but from Leahy University. And he wrote a book called Darwin's Black Box. You know what he said? When you get down to the biochemistry of a cell, do you realize in the biochemistry of a cell, you have all these machines. They're biochemical machines. In other words, just to sense light and turn it into electrical impulses isn't a simple little task. It takes all these different molecules, all the right place, right time, right concentration, all together, page after page of all these things, all together, or it won't work. And you've got that biochemical machine and another one and another one and another one, all communicating together like a big plant making motor cars with all these robots working together. And he said, life is built on machines. He said, you can't believe in chance random processes. But you see, there's even a more powerful argument than that, because Richard Dawkins would argue, oh, those machines just came about by chance. But those machines came from the blueprints on our DNA. Now, here's the interesting thing. If you believe in evolution,